Texas A&M, I've tried to wrap my head around a number of different takes for how to perceive this game. Does this mean Texas A&M is actually really good, or does it mean that they're not as good as we thought? I tend to lean towards the first one, but I can't ignore what I saw in the second half. So the most shocking score of the morning by far was South Carolina going to College Station at Kyle Field and just blowing out, dominating a Texas A&M team whose sloppiness made Alabama look like a buttoned-up organization today. So for Texas A&M to trail by 27 points at the half, you knew, oh my gosh, SEC teams are what when trailing by this many? Oh, and 286. They're done. Shocking upset. This would be the first ranked top 3 team to lose at home to an unranked team since Miami did it to Louisville a few weeks ago. More on the Cardinals later on this show. If you watched this game in the first half and thought and said to yourself, Texas A&M could still do it, it's possible. I don't know. I'll have what you're having is where I come down on that hypothetical thought. Because nothing went well. It was so bad that Texas A&M was gifted a possession against South Carolina. Don't forget, the Gamecocks are having a dreadful season. 3-6 coming into today, and it's been ugly. And there was a lot of ugliness in this game. Texas A&M, goal to go off a turnover, and then all of a sudden they wound up with 0 points. You can drop a touchdown, miss a throw, and miss a field goal in the same sequence and win the game? South Carolina. Normally, I didn't think this would be possible for my fan mood assessment post-game scale. Worst of vibes for South Carolina. You had a chance to get yourself to bowl eligibility. You had a chance to give your fans something exciting, and you just collapsed historically. Historically. Last time I saw a collapse that big was Oregon in the Rose Bowl against TCU in 2015. They had a backup center who couldn't snap the ball. That's what happened. But here's the thing. That was at least, I'm not going to say a great excuse because you got to have a backup center who can snap the ball. But there was at least a reason there. There was no rhyme or reason to what happened in this second half. South Carolina just let Texas A&M do whatever they wanted. And despite their mistakes, it was the easiest looking 28. Texas A&M fumbled in the red zone again in the second half. They had 2 trips inside the 10, wind up with a combined 0 points, and they overcame a 27-point deficit. So my biggest takeaway with Texas A&M is that they have the ability to play with anyone, but they could play down to anyone. Because they are so, I talked about this with them going into this week, or maybe it was last week. Everything blends together at this point. They're big play dependent. Everything about them is explosive. They create explosives on offense. They allow explosives. They are not great defending the run. Gamecocks only actually went for 121 on the ground in this game. Marcel Reed went for 439 yards on 22 completions. This was the easiest. Concepcion and Ashton Bethel-Roman had at least 135 yards each. Texas A&M made the easiest 28-0 run I have ever seen. They just marched up and down the field, turned around and got a stop. And Lenora Sellers, man, do you hear the word development get thrown out with quarterbacks a lot? You should. You should. His development as a passer is straight up awful. That's the biggest reason South Carolina lost this game. Is Lenore Sellers has so far to go. I'm talking further than Arch Manning at the beginning of the season. That's the way that it feels. So Texas A&M, I still believe is a great team. Indiana struggled for a half with Wisconsin today. Then they figured it out. In Texas A&M, it looked a lot worse because it was a lot worse. Their floor isn't very high, but their ceiling is very high. And you know now, they're never out of a game. That was the easiest 28-point run I can remember seeing. So, Texas A&M, no vibes for the fan base. You got out. I know it was thrilling, but if you look at it from a football standpoint, you got to be able to realize, okay, there are some real problems that have to be worked out here. But Mike Elko's been extended, so he won't be the head coach somewhere else. At least there's that. Let's stay in the state of Texas and go to the Longhorns, who were beat soundly once the fourth quarter rolled around. This was a close competitive game, 14-10 going into the fourth. Now, I'm certain that the committee would not treat Texas any differently than they treated BYU, who lost on the road, and that game wasn't all that close, but it was semi-competitive-ish, kind of close, and then it came down to crunch time. And I'm certain they will punish Texas the same as they did in the Texas Tech game. Final score 34-10, where it was close throughout, and then the better team opened things up. This is a good win for Georgia. This is a good-looking resume win. Georgia is going to the SEC championship game. At least that's the way that it looks now that everybody's got a loss thrown in there. And the only undefeated teams in college football are in the Big Ten with Ohio State and Indiana. But they've got Charlotte and Georgia Tech. So no one's going to watch them play Charlotte this week. Why would you? I don't really know. That's why I'm really glad these late season SEC cupcakes are going away after this year. It's not good for the sport. Because Georgia just played this big-time game, and then next week, no one cares. And then they'll play Georgia Tech, and that could be a fun game. Because Georgia Tech escaped. Boston College was fighting, and Georgia Tech found a way. So their playoff hope is very much alive. But the Bulldogs beat Texas 35-10. So I could come on here and dunk on Arch Manning. That wouldn't be a very honest assessment of what happened to the Longhorns in this game. What did happen is Texas was shown to not be prepared. They should have been, but were not, to be a playoff team. Arch Manning took too long to get into a rhythm. I think he's in one now. And I think he played mostly good football. The interception was bad. Not going to argue with you on that. If you watch the game, you'd know that they did not have an Arch Manning problem above anything else. Texas ran as a team. Let's take out sack yardage. Texas ran for 40 yards. Not going to get it done. Texas had, 17 drops in this game? I don't know where the elite Texas receiving corps have gone, but that needs to be wildly retooled in the summer. And then you need to, put glue on Ryan Wingo's gloves or stop eating buttered popcorn before the games, because the drops are out of control for Texas. So he's not getting as much help as he should be. He still has things to work on, but at least I see him making progress, unlike Lenore Sellers, who's going 3 steps backwards, it feels, and not even taking that many steps forward, quite frankly. So for Texas in this spot at 7-3, they should not make the college football playoff. I don't care if they beat Texas A&M. You lost by 25 to the Georgia Bulldogs, who are a really good team. I'm not disputing that. But what other team in which conference would get that level of respect? I don't want to see it. But fundamentally, if you overlook that factor, which can happen, I never want to see a 3-loss team in the college football playoff. I'm sure it'll happen one day. And Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler were talking about the discussion. I think it's fair to have the discussion. I'm just saying, as a college football fan, I never want to see a 3-loss team in the playoff. I don't care what your schedule is. I don't care what your conference is. I really don't. I do not want you to be able to lose 3 games and still make the playoff. If you beat Texas A&M, let that be something that you carry into bowl season, into the off season, and into next year as, hey, we know how to do this. Or maybe you play spoiler for Texas A&M in some capacity. Sorry, I misspoke a moment ago. The Aggies didn't lose that game. It was just that wild. So if it's Georgia, Texas A&M in the SEC championship game, both those teams should go to the college football playoff. Unless Georgia loses to Georgia Tech. Those are different scenarios. I'll explore those another day. But Texas should be out. Texas should absolutely be out. Even if they beat Texas A&M, I would like them to get the same exact treatment that Ole Miss got a season ago. To which, as everyone was belly aching and Lane was tweeting and all that stuff, you know what it kept coming back to? Don't lose to Kentucky. And you know what it should come back to for Texas if they do beat Texas A&M in a couple weeks? It should come back to don't lose to Florida. The Gators stink. Yeah, they pushed Ole Miss for a little while today, probably because Lane Kiffin was thinking about what it's going to be like to coach for the team on the other sideline one day, which kind of seems like that's going to be the case. So that's just how it seems. That's all. I'm not reporting anything breaking there. So for Texas, I think there are a lot of positives to take away at the end of the season. Certainly, the vibes in Austin are bad today, because he went on the road. Once again, Steve Sarkisian has not been able to beat the high-end teams since taking over as Texas's head coach. Is he starting to build a James Franklin narrative? You tell me. Probably too early to say that, but there's a little bit of a case. Because remember, Texas has been the beneficiary compared to Oklahoma of playing a comparatively weaker SEC schedule. What happens when that rotates back? We're going to find out. I think Sark is a good coach. I think that Sark's offense was pretty darn bad today against a Georgia defense that has not been great this year. They look more like Georgia, but that also comes back to the Texas offense not doing a lot of the little things right and not being good enough along the offensive line. I don't want to see Texas anywhere near the college football playoff, but I'm okay if Arch Manning comes back in 2026 because he's taken some real strides. So at least you've got that. But also, he was not the problem today.